welcome back. It's been quite a long time, but we're back in the game. And I did check beforehand. This is episode 14 of the Modern Game Pod. So whether episode 13 was unlucky for some and did trigger our break is a question that we'll have to leave unanswered. But to start us off, Josh, how are you doing? I think it was almost like about 3 or 4 months since we last recorded, so we really do have plenty to talk about today.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, I don't know when the last one was. 3 or 4. Wow. Yeah, I suppose it has been. Yeah, work's just been mental for me, sort of the last quarter. So yeah, finding time to do pods and stuff is just hard. But no, I am good, thank you. Apart from that, just being very busy. Have been enjoying my summer holiday from So Rare. But ready to be back this weekend. It's very exciting for me. So I think we did a pod a similar time last year, actually. I remember saying some similar things. So yeah, I think I said last year that I was like never going to not play summer again. But I've enjoyed my break this year, feeling refreshed and ready to get stuck back into it. What about you? What about yourself?
So I have been playing summer. It's a funny one because I think when I started, I started at a time where it was like almost the ending of the Euro season, beginning of the summer, and I felt that my approach of trying to find undervalued players might lead me down the path to find players in leagues like Korea and MLS. And I think what's ended up happening is I've got such a big portion of my gallery that it does make sense to continue. Oh, sorry, hang on. I've got such a big portion of my gallery that it does make sense because that's sort of when I'm stronger. One of the things I will say is that the prizes, sort of quality-wise, I do notice that they are significantly better when all the leagues are running, when you've got a big overlap.
Yep.
So I think I don't regret playing in summer, far from it. Like I did have one sort of really top tier reward in Mamadashvili, which was really, really nice to win. Even with the links to buy-in at the moment, he's still sort of holding around 0.6 ETH, which is probably my best prize I've had for a while. Yep. But I think the challenge I've had is that I'm winning frequently. Like I'll get a couple of cards a week, but they're all kind of T2s, T3s. It's very like middle of the road. I've not quite had that, real sort of breakout success. I'd like, to be fair, Mamadashvili was a podium, so it came with a nice chunk of ETH, but I'd like to be challenging at higher levels more regularly rather than just sort of consistently placing somewhere in the top 100 and getting something. So yeah. We'll probably come on to it in a minute, but I've gone through a fairly substantial gallery purge in the last couple of weeks. I've shifted out a lot of stuff and I've tried to give myself a bit more focus because I think I am sometimes guilty of playing too many competitions.
Yeah.
When actually it might be better for my gallery to really sort of focus on maybe 3 or 4 that I want to try and win at a high level regularly. I will say that I did have quite a lot of bad luck with injuries. I made some really, really big moves to try and lean into the summer and try and win as much as I could. Unfortunately, 2 of my largest purchases, super rare Mamana from River Plate and super rare Quintero, who's now playing, well, I say playing, I use the term very loosely, in Colombia. They have not gone well for me. And I spent, kind of best part of 2 ETH on getting 2 players that I thought could be real summer game changers for me. They did not. It's kind of like with Challenger last year, to be honest. Like I made a couple of big moves. I brought in Dino Hotic, super rare, rest in peace. He's now gone to play in Poland, which is like one of the very few uncovered gaps we've got in Europe. But he managed to pick Poland. It's Poland or Greece, isn't it? They're like the the two danger zones. He managed to, after like 6 months of being linked to Turkey, which I was getting quite excited about, he managed to find his way to Poland, which was quite painful the other day when I realized that the transfer had gone through when I was watching the AZ versus Lech Poznan friendly, and it got subbed on, and I was like, oh damn it, he's gone there. So yeah, that wasn't too fun for me. But I think honestly speaking, I've had a rotten run of luck on like top tier super rare purchases. So the fact that I'm still winning regularly and I'm able to sort of sell out of these cards that are all around sort of 0.06 to 0.15 ETH, that kind of range, has been able to enable me to free up ETH for what I want to try and do, which is exciting. So yeah, fairly middle of the road summer, but considering how many gut punches I took on these super rares, I'm kind of happy with where I'm at, to be honest. So yeah, constantly. I think this is the thing with Sorare, you've got to kind of constantly evolve and keep refreshing in order to stay competitive. So that's what I've done in the past couple of weeks. Yeah, I really have had a purge. I think I sold about 3 ETH worth of cards and kind of reinvested all that into new purchases. So yeah, how about yourself? How are you? I know you obviously take a break from entering lineups, but I don't think you ever truly take a break from Sorare. So what's been on your radar, and sort of obviously transfers have been a big one. I'm spotting a nice shiny super rare. Redemption in Russia, super rare, shall we say? It's popped into your gallery in the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, how's it been going for you?
Yeah, good. I think, yeah, like you say, you never really sort of switch off, and I've always been one that's been, I don't know, tempted by the odd rumor buy. So yeah, when I see something that I think has got a bit of validity, I'll try and act on it. I think for me, this summer has been a case of I've been trying to get out of rare competitions. I think rare competitions are getting to a stage now with the number of players we have playing the game. They're just becoming heavily saturated, and the number of cards we have available in the game. The rare only competitions, yeah, all-star rare, all the way through to Cap 40 rares and Cap 240 rare, etc. I just think they're becoming really, really, really hard to win. You have to get superb, near perfect scores to win. We could probably go and have a look at some of the scores I put up in Challenger Rare last year. 400, 425 plus, and getting like tier 1s or sometimes even tier 2 rewards. And I just think that is not a good place to be focusing your ETH and your investment, not investment, but focusing your resources towards. So I sold pretty much all my rare cards. I think I have 17 left, as I still intend to play the Pro Division, just albeit on maybe sort of a slightly scaled back version. So I basically have Celtic stack, which is now forwardless after my Jota transferred to Saudi Arabia. So I think I might try and grab Abada. I think if Abada doesn't move, he could potentially just come in and sort of replace Jota and go from there. And then, so yeah, I've kept the Celtic stack. So I've, rare cards. Oh, here we go. This looks nice. So I'm still trying to get rid of Vega Hedenstadt. He's not moving very well. Joe Lewis has left Aberdeen, but I'm not quite sure where he's going. And Igor Poshnowski is back from injury with Varazdin. So like selling him now just doesn't really make much sense. And then like players right at the bottom, like Christian Naboa and Edin Vishka. I bought Edin Vishka for 0.865 when Ethereum was like £2,800 a coin. And you can now get him for 0.06.
I've got a few of those as well.
So yeah, I'm not selling him at this sort of price. I actually think if listeners are interested on who I think are good picks moving, like underground picks moving into the Euro season, I think Edin Vishka would be sort of right at the top of my list for midfielders. The Trabzonspor front line looks quite frankly scary. And
I think they scored a lot of goals this
year. Mislav Orsic coming on the left, Vishka's going to be on the right. That's a pretty deadly winger duo. So yeah, I think he's so I've just found him. And then I've got like some really old players that obviously no one is just going to buy, like Stecklenberg, who's retired, Junozovic, that's retired. Soslan Janaev that is without a club. But I did sort of hear that he may move to one of the newly promoted RPL sides, which would be an absolute blessing, as I have his only Super Air as well. And then I've kept and Rune Jarstein is going for a court case in Norway or Germany, one of the two at the minute. So I'm keeping him until he comes back into play, and then I'll sell him at some point. And then the rest I'm sort of keeping. So plan is obviously keep the Celtic players, and then I'll run them with Super Air, Carter Vickers, and McGregor. And then I need a forward. I think quite a lot of the time that forward may be Malcolm, just because I'm not sure exactly who will play in Rodgers' preferred system. I mean, obviously Furuhashi is going to play, but I sold my Furuhashi because he has no all-round score. And then the other pro division team that I can build up, when Dominik Livakovic moves to Fenerbahce, will be Neverstich, and then probably one of the Dynamo Zagreb defenders in Super Air. And then I may need to grab I'll work about a couple of things. That one will probably be slightly more fluid than the Celtic stack, which will pretty much, I suppose, be kind of rigid moving forward. Whenever they have a game, I'll just play them. And if I pick up a Bada when a Malcolm doesn't have a game on one of the Scottish midweeks, I'll just lob a Bada in there for a five-man stack. And then the other one will probably be a bit more fluid. I think I may sell Safanov. I actually might sell him. The reason I've kept him is I have this first game week coming back. So 391 is it? It's going to be only Russia, Austria, Norway. So not Austria, Russia, Croatia, Norway, and Denmark that are playing in Challenger. And unless Livakovic moves before the weekend, which I guess he could, he did sort of seem to say goodbye to the fans at the Super Cup, but then he sort of seemed to say goodbye to the fans the last game of last season. So, maybe that's just something he's doing every game now.
Just going to keep on keep us guessing every time he's going to say goodbye.
So so I wanted to hang on to Safanov until Livakovic is transferred, because it gives me a goalkeeper to play in game week 391 in pro, which just makes sense because the number of entrants is just going to be very low, and the lineup I can put out will be probably very strong compared to what the teams that play will have anyway. I may sell Safanov or I may not. And this is all presuming that he plays again, because he was dropped for Agatsev. Was it Agatsev? Somebody at the end of last season by Krasnodar. That's sort of the plan for the pro divisions. Move out of rare completely. I've kept a handful of rare cards together to try and muddle together two pro teams a weekend, essentially. The Celtic stack being the main one, and then a bunch of leftovers of players that I think are undervalued currently, making up with a couple of super rares as well. And then the main focus has been moving stronger in Challenge Europe Super Rare, and then having a gas Super Rare team as well. And I've made some pretty big acquisitions here. So I bought a Marko Malenica unique goalkeeper from Osijek. I'm hopeful they can get through their Europa Conference League quals, but it is hopeful. I think they're going to struggle. They've reasonable financial difficulty. They've sold quite a few of their key players. And hopefully they can get through and get to the group stages. Him with midweeks would be really great. If not, he's still going to be a good goalkeeper. They had a really good defensive record last year. I quite like him moving forward. And the price I got, I paid 1.65, but I was pretty pleased with that, to be honest. Like the time I was shopping around for super rare goalkeepers, the Walter Benitez, Simon Mignolet, who else was I looking for? Matt Ryan, were all sort of around this price or more. So I sort of felt, and they weren't going to be priced away for any cheaper. So I sort of felt if I could get this in, obviously it gives me 45% or 40%, whatever the bonus will be, as opposed to the 20% super rare bonus. And I just thought that this was a better play. Again, sort of from a scarcity factor as well. Obviously he's the only one that there's going to be this season, not competing with 10 others. So I thought that was nice and just boosts my total power in the super rare division, which, I think is a good thing to have. And there's a number of times last year where I missed the podium at Challenger Super Rare by 0.8 of a point or 2 points or something, where obviously if you have a unique, you sort of hit above those thresholds. in those weeks where everyone does sort of go off. So I've built that. So going to play him. I've got most of the Dynamo Zagreb lads I've kept. Obviously, traded out of Livakovic SR because he's going to move. But most of the rest of the Dynamo Zagreb players. Sorry, I know you're doing a lot of jumping around on the screen here. I've kept. So still got Rostovsky and Morami that make up sort of one defender when one plays, the other doesn't. I've got 2 Josip Misic super airs, 1 Lubicic super air. So yeah, these guys will make up sort of probably the backbone of my Challenger SR contingent, along with Malenica. And then I have Noah Lang forward up front, which is going to be nice. I think Noah Lang could be like, I don't know, Javi Simmons of last year reincarnated, as long as he doesn't do anything stupid.
It's a nice separation between the price you paid and the floor price there.
Yeah, and that floor price is the mid card. If you check the last sale on the Super Air forward, it's looking even tastier. So that was a nice gamble. Rick Elfrink, I think that's how you say it, is like the in the know journalist for PSV, and he tweeted saying they were looking at him, and I just immediately bought a forward off the market, much to the disgust of PSU fans too. So that's turned out quite nicely. And you can see right next to it, Adam Stechkal's. I played 0.3 for his Super Air, and he's now moved to Tyrol permanently and should be the starting goalkeeper there. So had a couple of nice ones. I think again the Pavlidis I bought for about 0.6 worth of value, and it looks like he's going to stay for another season. And of course Bongonda, like you alluded to at the start of the conversation. So I paid, I think it was 0.2 or 0.25 maybe to Powell and 3 or 4 super rare shitters, we'll call them, just absolutely dead cards. And yeah, that's worked out really nice. I think forward is going to be a position I'm really strong this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Bongonda could be an absolute cap mode smasher as well.
Yeah,
beginning, couldn't he? If you do, like, you've got the flexibility to sort of play in a couple of different places. Like, I think that obviously Stechkal as well. Exactly. I think I'm going to be following Tyrol as well this year because they've taken Luca Kronberger on loan.
Oh, which
is an under 23. I think there's only like 2 forward super rare cards before he got flipped back to a midfielder. So I have held on to that. He was. I'm trying to think where he was last season. He was on loan again last season,
wasn't it? Initially.
Yeah, so he was at Graz, but then Graz put him out on loan somewhere else, and I've forgotten where he was. But I think he's just. He was just that little bit too young. He's quite a small player. I think he's like a little bit too young last season. He struggled with the physicality of the league, and I'm just hoping that this season he might step up because he's got a wicked set piece delivery. I remember that was what got me quite excited about watching him when I was watching the Graz reserve. There was that.
Where was he? Because he
was Flyer Arm before
Almira, was it?
Almira, yeah, he was at Almira. So I watched a couple of games there. That was one of my Y Scout purchases when I was like, "Oh, this kid looks all right." Like, watched a bunch of footage. But yeah, I think it's interesting what Tyrol are doing. Like, they seem to be, really leveraging, the larger clubs in the league, which do tend to, Graz and obviously Salzburg in particular, do tend to stockpile their young players, don't they? So then it's like there's opportunities for other clubs in Austria to get the ones that maybe don't quite make it at the top sides, but could still be decent at this level.
Yeah, absolutely. You see lots of Salzburg rejects. I don't know, rejects is maybe the wrong word. And they even buy a few back. I mean, obviously, there's been lots of talk this week about the number 1 goalkeeper position. And Alex Schlager was obviously at Salzburg in his youth and then moved to Lask, and then they've brought him back and looks like he's going to start in goal. Which is great for me because I have his super rare.
Oh, there we go. You're going to be stocked. Goalkeepers and forwards. You're going to have loads of them.
Yeah, there he is.
He's
there he is.
Oh my God,
you missed it.
Past him.
Just in the middle of your screen, top middle. Just there in the last jersey. Now at the bottom, middle.
Oh, there he is. Look, I'm scrolling right past him. I'm just looking at your Divine Wrench and your Callum McGregor. Like, yeah, I think you've got a solid set of super rares to flex between a couple of the different competitions that you can enter them in. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that's basically the plan. I'm hoping to play sort of at least, I guess 3 at least, or maybe 4 on the weekend of the super rare comps. And I've been, the players I'm bringing in have been quite heavily focused on having midweek utility as well. I made sure to bring it. So the sort of main play I'm sort of considering for midweek is running Unastall, Proper, Sadlek, and then Classy and Pavlidis. And Pavlidis is basically just going to be like my midweek forward for this year. Because AZ are just going to have some really nice fixtures again.
Yeah, I hope so.
And yeah, obviously, hopefully, Twente have been again given not the easiest qualification route. So I'm sort of really hoping that this year they can pull through the quals. Obviously, they went out in the qualification rounds last year. So yeah, I'm sort of hoping they can pull through and then sort of have 2 Dutch teams in the Conference League, which should both have a relatively good chance of bringing in some big SO5 scores. I am slightly concerned about Twente's strength though, because they have sold a lot of their sort of backbone of their team, Vaclav Černý being the sort of biggest absence, I suppose. But we'll see how they go. But yeah, sorry, I know I've sort of rambled on about what I've been doing for a little while there, but that's basically how I've been trying to mold my gallery, trying to increase the scarcity of the divisions I'm playing in primarily, so that there's less competition and I can win more prizes in those divisions with my high quality squads. The only thing is, as we all know, is that the SR division just doesn't give out very good prizes. So I guess I think the Cap 240 will be something that I'm prioritizing. Like you say, I do have a couple of outlier L15s to start the season straight away. Obviously, Stechskal's L15 isn't going to stay at 0, but Bongonda's will take a little while to creep up to where I think really the sky's the limit with Bongonda. Like, he could just be. I know Promes is in that team still, so they're probably going to be. He's not going to have all the set pieces. Maybe won't have penalties. But
he didn't have sets when he was at Genk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and he was still a complete smasher then.
Yeah, so hopefully they can just play together and be great. So yeah, I think I'm prioritizing Challenger Super primarily, just to try and churn back into my gallery some of the top Super Airs in that division and sort of monopolize it as best I can. Obviously, I'm not going to monopolize it because there's lots of very good Challenger teams. But yeah, that's sort of the plan. And then have the cap sides to have a strong cap 270, a strong cap 240. If the cap 240 hits, then I've got that guaranteed $250 or whatever it is now. Is it $250 now? I can't remember how much it is now. I think it is. And then a chance of a prize, whatever the prize may be. And then 270 obviously is sort of like the unique capture spot, where if you do manage to podium 1 week, then you're winning unique, which is obviously nice and will push me forward. Do that a couple of times and maybe have some funds freed up. I think the sort of the long-term goal is to maybe try and get to cap 240 unique at some point. I have the goalkeeper, which is essentially the hardest position to buy. But just the amount of uniques you need for that is just. I saw Muldrow, Serre, Eredivisie or Eredivisie Serre, one of the two, was doing it last year with just 4 uniques. And he did win a couple of thresholds, I think, which basically paid for the price he'd spent on, he bought 4 uniques very, very cheap. And then, sort of played them and won. I think he won 2 or 3 times and, made back most of his investment there and obviously still has the assets. So, I think, something like that may be something I'd look at. But, just trying to sort of compete consistently in the SR competitions is my priority moving forward.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think I find the cap modes interesting. Like, I think, I sort of alluded to the lack of luck I had with my super rares. The one I did forget to mention was Lanzalotta, who lost his spot in Argentina's juniors after being fairly set there as a goalkeeper for quite a while. What I think was interesting about that is it made me rethink my approach, because even to this day the majority of my gallery is rares, and I was sort of stretching myself to go for that super rare threshold. And I had a good run of it when everything overlapped. So when we had like all the leagues running at the same time, just before the Euro seasons ended, I think I won super rare threshold like 3 times out of 5 attempts. And then after Europe ended, I lost a bunch of, sort of my core super rare pieces. And I then had this sort of wave of injuries, and then Lanzarote getting dropped, and I was like, it felt like I was kind of going through the motions with capped super rare. And because I was trying to prioritize capped super rare, I was taking strength away from my all-star rare pro lineups.
Yeah.
And I was like, why am I doing this? And I think what it was is I'd like set in my mind that I really wanted to target the sort of cap modes over the summer. But when I actually looked at it, I was like, okay, well, now I'm not winning in cap modes, and I'm not winning as much as I potentially could do in All-Star Rare Pro if I was to just focus on All-Star Rare Pro and under 23 Rare Pro and America Rare Pro. And I think the big change here is, I remember when we talked about cap modes to begin with, they didn't have the ETH on All-Star Rare Pro.
Yeah.
And I think that what I found quite interesting is I've just been able to grab a little bit of ETH consistently every week, like in the All-Star Rare Pro division. Like I'm currently sat, as we speak, I'm sat 16th, which 16th in All-Star Rare Pro gives you essentially half the amount of money you would have made on a cat super rare side. And I'm going to get a card as well. And I think what was interesting is I had to sort of take a really sort of critical look and say, look, I've planned a strategy, but it's not going well. Like it's not going as I'd intended. I bought I bought Hansen, the Rosenborg goalkeeper. So I bought the Rosenborg goalkeeper, and he was like my summer super rare, because I was looking at it and I was like, I don't really like MLS goalkeepers because they just don't keep clean sheets very often. I thought I'd had my Argentine goalkeeper covered, and the idea was I was going to run like capped 270 super rare with my Argentinos Juniors 270 stack, and then Hansen as my sort of 240 goalkeeper. It worked for a couple of weeks, and I bought Hansen really cheap when there was a certain amount of debate as to whether or not he would be the starter, and then I sold him on for a profit, and I got, I think, two or three thresholds with him as my goalkeeper, which I was like, brilliant. Like I've actually, like, it was a profitable move. But I think when I started to see it sliding and the returns not like as strong as I'd hoped to, I made quite a quick decision to sort of replot my course, and that was to focus on All-Star Rare Pro and to focus on America Rare Pro. But that meant I had now more super rares than I really needed, because there were particular players that I bought with this whole idea of playing cap 240, cap 270, and then like rotating them through All-Star as I needed. So I ended up having like Herv Kofi, who subsequently has been linked with a move away from Charleroi. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not using him anymore. Karol Swiderski, for example. I wasn't using Swiderski. I actually bought Swiderski, and he won me in the very first week. He won me a Christian Ramirez super rare, who at the time was like a tier 4 or something. He was really low down the tiers because he wasn't playing.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he's broken into the team and scored like a handful of goals in his last 6 games. So then it was like, okay, well, suddenly now like Christian Ramirez has got a similar output to Swiderski, and he pairs quite nicely with my Zelarayan rare in the All-Star or in the Champion America. Mm-hmm. So I ended up selling Kofi, Swiderski, Hansen. Those were all, I can't remember how much I sold them all. They were all around about 0.6 each. I had a bunch of other super rares as well, which I just sort of kept for depth, like Ibrahim Kone, Petagna. There were a bunch of cards. I looked back and went, Jesus Christ, why did I buy these? Like it really was like I'd only bought them to like because I was trying to fill a gap for a particular week on Cap Super Rare. But the good thing is now that there's a lot of people looking to fill a gap on Cap Super Rare. So there is that opportunity to sort of sell back out of them. Actually, you know what? Let's flip in. Let's go to my transactions, because this might be, we sort of see when I started to have my sell-off. Happened a couple of weeks ago. Here we go. So so I sold off. So started off like Andre Hansen went, Herv Kofi went. I then got rid of Petagna. Paradella was just a swap because somebody wanted the 1-of for their collection bonus. Ibrahim Kone went. then Esquivel went. He was just like some random guy I won in Mexico, like proper bottom of the tier stuff. And then in Sua, Akumu's been linked with a move to Reims, and also Genk have signed 2 more centre backs. They've signed Kandus from USG, and they signed one at Tabe from Kortrijk. So the chances of Akumu staying seem now really, really low. So I was just happy to get back out of him for what I paid for him. I then got rid of Brian Haynen, Karol Swiderski, Paulinho went, Aaron Long went. It was just a bunch of like super rare depth. I was like, I've got this in my gallery as depth for a division that I'm now not currently focusing on.
Yeah, might as well not have it.
Selling all of those, and again, I sold some for a profit. I think I took a loss on Long, but the way I looked at it is like, I'm not using these cards, and I've got like, again, like the 3 of them, well, actually with Swiderski as well, that's close to 3 ETH in super rares that was just sat there. They weren't really the kind of super rares either that I would use in All-Star Rare Pro or in America Rare Pro, because I think you need to win those divisions. You really do need top super rares, and you also need a bit of correlation in order to, if they hit, you want them all to hit in the same week. And I think with MLS, the difficulty between the home and away fixtures is that I didn't have any other Charlotte players. So typically Swiderski was banging when other players that I had in my gallery weren't, and vice versa. So we just didn't really, he was scoring the points in all the wrong weeks, basically. And I was just like, although he's a good card, for me, like, I think sort of like one of my guiding principles in team building and team selection is around trying to like play the fixtures and get correlation between the lineups, so that, if they're keeping a clean sheet, you get a bonus from more than one player. If they score, there's a chance that you might get a double decisive with a goal and an assist. And I think what that's allowed me to do is act on what I believe to be opportunities in this coming new season. So if we go back a little bit, you can start to see where I started making some big purchases. So I've got the boy
Nice
Batterina,
Batman. Yeah, I love it.
I really do hope he stays. I think if he stays, he's definitely among the top under 23s, and that sort of leads me into where my focus is. And I think where I've had success in the past has been in picking up under 23s before they maybe became, household names. Like Enzo Lefebvre, super rare, for example. I think I bought him for like 0.3 ETH when he was just breaking into the Lorient team, and nobody was really interested in him. And I think for that, like, I do spend a lot of time scouting. I spend a lot of time like watching tape on Y-Scout, watching live games, and I was like, what I like about under 23 is the high turnover. And I completely get your point around, the rare competitions now. There's a lot of people running similar teams. There's a lot of supply. The Challenger, and I know we talked about it the other day, like in particular Belgium. But Belgium's got many, many, many years of supply now.
Yeah.
So if a popular team hits, you're likely
you're up against it.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw this. You remember you were talking about it, but there was one week last season where I scored, I think it was 428 points, and that got me a tier 3 rare. Like before the tiers changed. I remember I won Christian Bruls, who was worth like not a lot, and when I remember as well, because it happened really early in the game week. So for quite a while, I was sat 3rd, and I was dreaming. I was like, I've never won a star in Challenger. This could be brilliant for my gallery. And then as the other games rolled in, mostly Ajax. I remember it was a week that Ajax completely smashed, and like most of their players got 100. I just slipped down until in the end, I was like, 420 points. I've seen people win divisions with less.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there with an old tier 3. So I think where you look at Champion and Challenger, there is an opportunity to have an established collection with high XP, You know, you've owned them for a long time. You've got the collection bonus on them. And then it just becomes an arms race around that collection bonus.
Exactly.
You know, like, and I think it's going to happen this year with Liverpool. Like champion in the midweeks with Liverpool paying Europa League. If Liverpool line up a strong team for midweeks, and you know the injury news and the team news tends to be pretty good for Liverpool, so the likelihood is, you know, the team will be known in advance.
You'll know,
and everyone will get their Liverpool stacks in. Like Challenger Europe is going to be like an arms race between people stacking different sides. You know, you're obviously going to have your Bayern Munichs in there as well. You're going to have your Real Madrids. Like it's going to be tough to break into that. The same with Challenger. Whereas I think under 23, you have a natural churn each year. And that sort of plays a little bit more into my style of like trying to find players before they become sort of household names. You know, I got lucky last year with Tijani Reinders. You know, I sort of was watching the early AZ qualifiers and I was like, oh, you know, Reinders has the sort of style of play that would fit So Rare. And I remember like grabbing Reinders quite early and he was a, you know, really sort of good card for me last year. But I think what is interesting about under 23 is that like the graduation from under 23 forces a natural turnover and it forces a changing of the guard, so to speak. And, you know, no Trent, no Mbappe, you know, straight away, those were two cards that were, you know, pretty much guaranteed to smack every single week that they played. You know, Joey Veerman, no more Joey Veerman. Like there is a lot of players that were absolute under 23 smashes that are no longer eligible for selection under 23. And I think I felt that was a really, really big opportunity for me to lean into. And I have been leaning into this for very, very many months because it all started back. When did I buy this, man? I would say took a punt, but you know, it was a fairly sizable punt. I bought mid-May. So I bought Gavin Bazunu thinking that, you know, Southampton at that point, I'm sure they would have been confirmed to be down. But there was talk about, you know, is Bazunu number one? Is he not? At the moment in time, it was the backup. So I grabbed myself at Bazunu, and you know already now there's a bit more confidence in him starting, and the price has gone up. What's that? 4.437, 0.62. So the sort of focus for me in the strategy is there's going to be high turnover in under 23. So like you can't say that the managers that were winning regularly last year, there's no guarantee that they're going to be winning regularly again this year. They've got to reshape their gallery. They've got to, you know, rethink their strategy. Who are they going to go after? And I think Bazunu could be a really, really top goalkeeper for under 23 this year. And the way I've been thinking about it is there's high turnover of under 23, which gives an opportunity. Championship, through the volume of fixtures, is another huge opportunity, you know. And like I'm targeting like a lot of Championship players. One, because Plymouth Argyle are now covered, like happy days. I have actually bought my first Plymouth Argyle card, a transfer from Eredivisie across. I'm going to be watching a lot of Championship next season, which what I think I like about this is I'm going to be following the team news a lot closer than I would have in the past. And you've got those overlaps. You know, I remember there were managers, you know, Harry Trades last year. He had a lot of success with his Burnley team, right? Because what would happen is you'd have Burnley facing Rotherham the week that like Real Madrid were facing Inter Milan, for example. You know, you get those midweeks where the fixture strength, it's much, much easier for a club in the Championship than it is in the teams in the Champions League. So I always was like a big part of my strategy from last year moving into this year was I want to have a look at the teams that are going down. Like, you know, obviously it has been confirmed like Southampton, Leicester, Leeds have gone down. But I was always keeping an eye on who was going down because I was like, there's an opportunity to buy here. You know, the Championship's going to have a ton of fixtures, which gives you a really good opportunity to sort of run in a couple of different divisions. Because now I could run these guys in under 23. I could run them in second division Europe, although that would probably be insane.
You imagine that?
Can you imagine that? A full Southampton under 23 stack in
second division Europe.
Europe, exactly. I might just do it for the lulz 1 week just to see what I win, just to be like, you never thought I'd play it here, would you? I think that's when we go into the sort of, pep levels of overthinking that. But no, I think the reason I say that is because, like, say, for example, there's a week that Southampton are playing Leicester. The chance of Bazunu keeping a clean sheet is fairly low. So I'm probably not going to stick him in my priority under 23 lineup.
Yeah,
I've
sure.
got a couple of other lineups, but there's still flexibility to play. But I think realistically, it's going to be under 23, maybe all-star, depending on, what other players I have in my week. But the big one for me is the licensing. So Southampton is a license that has been obtained as part of a deal with the Premier League.
Yes.
Southampton has not been obtained directly via Southampton. So there, for me, is a chance that Southampton might not be licensed again this year.
And then you keep your new season mint and collection bonus.
And collection bonus in under 23, where there's less likely to be high XP cards because you have to constantly refresh, right? You can't, there's not a chance that people are going to run a 10% Mbappe in under 23 this year. Like, people were close to running a 10% Mbappe, 15% Mbappe last year because, they either had them for a very long time or they bought them right at the beginning of the season. There were reasons, there were several seasons of Mbappe where you could have really, really high XP on it. So that, for me, I think is what I sort of consider to be my huge differential coming into this season, and it gives me an opportunity to really attack what I think will be quite a volatile division. Like, if I were to take this strategy and go and, try and take on the Bayern stacks in Challenger, then there's probably going to be a lot of other people with that same strategy that could have similar power cards. Whereas I do think there is potentially an opportunity that Southampton, Leicester could be very, very OP this year if they are not relicensed. Because they're going to have the collection. You're going to hold that bonus. You're going to have all these bonuses. Like, feasibly now, like my Bazunu at this moment in time, how much is he on? I think I'm already on like 12%.
10.5.
Oh no, I'm on 10.5.
That's still bloody good.
Yeah, and the season hasn't even started yet. So I think, like, feasibly, me getting Bazunu to like 12, 13% before Christmas.
Buy a boost.
Exactly. Yeah. No, but this is the thing, right? It's like, so then I've got a goalkeeper. Like, so if I'm running under 23 Rare Pro, and I can put a Bazunu in there that's got, over 12% bonus, then you're sort of part of the way to that being a super rare.
Yeah.
You've got some really, really powerful cards. So what I've been trying to do is build around that. So ignore all my K-League shenanigans here, where I went on my little soul collecting spree. What am I looking at? Well, Batarina's the kind of card that, he stays in Zagreb, you would be happy captaining him. Like, one of the things that I've gone 100%. Through recently is I've gone through a process of looking at my gallery and categorizing the players. And the way I categorized them was, star players, core players, depth players, or prospects. And the reason I thought about it like this is because I wanted to understand what the composition was like. I was sort of going back and asking myself, why do I always win regularly, but don't win top? I'm not often winning stars, but I am regularly winning tier 2s. And I sort of questioned myself. I said, look, what is that? Like, why is that happening? Like, there's certain things that happen into it, like luck, this week, I would be on the podium in All-Star Rare Pro if Sanfrecce hadn't given up a goal in like the 87th minute. Like, that is something you just, it's very unlucky. Like, they had a ridiculously favorable fixture. They should have smacked. They did not smack. That's, unfortunate. Yep. But one of the things I was looking at is I was like, I don't have that many stars. Like, I was looking at it and I was like, who are the players that I would be like, first name on the team sheet, kind of card that you would be happy captaining in 70% of your game week sort of thing. And I felt that I needed to go and get a couple of those because I had a lot of prospects, I had a lot of great depth cards to roll into the cap modes. But I was like, if I want to compete and I want to really, really be going for podiums on a regular basis, I'm going to need those sort of cards that can really go, 80 points, 90 points on a fairly regular basis. And I think like Batterine is one of them. There's my boy. There's my Plymouth Argyle boy. I don't have any faith that Argyle are going to be licensed. But I buy him. And then, what else I've looked at is really leaning into Southampton. I've got my boy Sam Edozie, who, if we go and have a look at Edozie a moment, let's go and have a look at his SO5 scores. And go back to all.
Saints are the one, aren't they? Because with Martin coming in, you'd think they'd probably adopt a possession-based system, which obviously we know is just very key for SO5 scores.
Absolutely.
Especially with defenders and, well, with every player, but, defenders especially can really rack up some points.
Absolutely. And I think so Edozie hasn't been playing in the preseason because he picked up a little injury after the Under-20 World Cup. So he's been, training away from the side. But what I will show you, let me have a look at this. So what's really interesting is this isn't on Zero Data because it wasn't covered. Go to here and have a look at Edozie. Basically, England under 20s were playing exactly the same setup that Southampton are potentially going to play. The only sort of difference here is this is sort of how Southampton look in possession. They might actually start with a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. And what is expected is sort of Shea Charles, out of possession, Shea Charles will drop back into the back three. He tends to, what sort of Martin tends to do is tuck the fullbacks inside and drop that sort of DM back in. And Shea Charles has played for Man City youth in centre-back and DM, so he sort of really fits the profile of that player. But what's sort of fascinating is you will have these sort of, narrow forwards that sit behind the lone striker. And Edozie, I think, is a really, really good shout for that sort of left attacking midfielder role. And he played that role really, really well for England under 20s. So I think that there's a lot about him that's quite exciting. He's very, very good on the ball, dribbling wise. He's kind of sort of player comp wise. It's like Phil Foden. Like he's sort of a similar type of player. So I'm really quite excited about him. Sekou Mara as well. Like he actually caught my eye. I won James Ward-Prowse last year, so I ended up watching a few Southampton games just to because I had a severe interest in Ward-Prowse. And I remember Mara came off the bench a couple of times. He's a number 9, but he's sort of good on the ball. He's got really good movement. He's quite an exciting player. So I think like he's another one that could get a shot in Southampton next year. The D-Gen one, coming on to your point around leaning into the Twitter news, was Carlos Alcaraz. There's been a lot of links to him to leave, and a big part of my Southampton game is trying to bet on the players I think are more likely to stay, because there's a lot of rumours that they will leave. Like there's a good chance that Tino Livramento is not at Southampton come the start of the season. So I kind of bought his rare to give me coverage. I was tempted by his super rare the other day, but it ended up going for like almost an ETH, and I was like, that's too much with the Newcastle rumours hanging over his head. Carlos Alcaraz, he has been linked with the rumour way. Most of the rumours have been fairly solid, though, to be fair. Like Napoli was one of his rumours. He actually came out and did an Instagram live response to transfer rumours, saying that the Napoli rumour was a load of rubbish and that he thanks Southampton for signing him and giving him the opportunity to play in England. And if Southampton wants him to stay, he's going to stay. So I'm betting that Charlie Alcaraz stays in Southampton. And I think if he does, 0.34 for a super rare, I think that could end up looking to be quite a decent purchase come the end of the season. Going back to wanting to get a few more stars in my gallery, I did buy the boy Leighton Clarkson, who
nice.
anyone that plays, Highland Amateurs FC 3-4 times a season, they're always going to get a shot to smack. So I thought, if you can't beat them, join them. I'm going to have to get some SPL representation. And to be fair, Aberdeen are in the qualifiers for the Europa Conference.
Yeah, Conference League quals, aren't they?
Yeah, if they can make it through those, then he could be quite a useful midweek player as well. And then
on Carlos Alcaraz, you can't search anything on Twitter about him because his namesake has just won Wimbledon as well. Obviously.
Absolutely, that's it. So that this is the news that's buried deep. I had to really trawl for this news. So I actually grabbed a couple cards off that manager. They seem to be selling off a bunch of cards at fairly reasonable multiples from the rare to the super rare. So
yeah, we have seen quite a jump in this, haven't we? It's not the old 4x, is it, that you used to get?
It's not. No, I mean, I paid.
We're talking like
Mignans was like almost 8x.
I was going to say we're talking like 7 or 8x now.
Yeah.
Which I think is quite interesting.
It is. It really is. I think I've actually grabbed a bunch of super rares from managers that were sort of looked like they were selling about a chunk of the gallery because it makes them much easier to acquire. I got actually, hang on. Let's go through. Let's just put a filter on this so we can just see my.
Sorry, I've put you off your. I've knocked you off your drift with your.
It's all right. It's all right. I'm rambling. I'm kind of giving away as well now. You can see the other super rares that I've bought. So I bought Molinas, Almendra, and Vera, and also Leonardo Morales as well. To be fair, they were all from managers that were not demanding high multiples because it looked like they were trying to sell a chunk of cards, and I think it just gave me a real opportunity. Like Morales, I don't know what his last sale is, but I know it's more than 0.392. Milinas, I would have been the last sale, but he's under 23 for like 3 more seasons, so like he's solid. So is Almendra. Fausto Vera's had a bunch of decent links for him moving on from Corinthians. It sort of plays into that strategy, but it allowed me to get these at much more favorable multiples than I would have got had it been a manager that was trying to sell them. I mean, Mignans I had to pay top dollar for, but I think Mignan's new auction is already higher than this. So I think that I've managed to sort of grab him in. Like the floor is 1.3. The current auction's already at, I think, this price, if not slightly more. So I imagine that Mignans might go for 1. I do think that he was probably, even though I paid, what was it, 8, almost 8, well, it was 8 times. So I think his rare is 0.1 at the moment. Actually, hang on. Let's go and have a look at Mr. Mignans. So what's his rare at? Oh, okay. His rare has come up a bit. Damn. Okay, yeah. So I got him the other week when the rare is around 0.15. The rare's 0.17 now, slightly up. But Reinders is going.
Yes.
Carlson's going.
Yes.
Those were the 2 set pieces takers last season. Minions looks like from pre-season he's going to play in the role that Reinders played, with Danny DeWitt in front and potentially forgotten his name now.
Classy and DeWitt are definitely going to play, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's the midfield 3 is Classy, DeWitt, and Minions. That's what it looks like from pre-season. With Classy playing deeper as more of a holding, and Minions giving that license to sort of get forward. He's quite good arriving late in the box. Like he scored a few goals last season. He's quite tall for a central midfielder. So what I think is interesting is he's going to play in a slightly deeper role. He's going to have a greater share of possession. There's also set pieces up for grabs. I did watch quite a bit of AZ last season, and when Reinders and Carlson weren't on the pitch, it tended to be Mignans or Van Brederode, who were the 2 players that were sort of taking corners when those guys were off. So I think that there's potentially room for Mignans to appreciating value from a rare side, and that's sort of what made me go for it, because I think sometimes, particularly with super rares, if you want to buy the card, you've holding firm on your, well, you used to be able to get this for 4 times. This just not happening, and then you're going to miss the player, right? Because I know now, if this auction goes for 1 ETH, nobody's going to give you the a minions for 0.8. That's what it was listed for last week. And I felt like with the auction coming up, I felt like I had to sort of jump in and grab this, because sometimes what I find is fascinating is like auctions almost like alert people to a card, and you've also seen like the first owner bonus like pumping values up a little bit, and then what happens? Everyone then like resets their expectations. So I wanted to try and get him in early, and I think that I just was, 7 or 8 times, whatever it was, the rare. I was like, actually, he could be a key part to my gallery. I am now heavily invested in AZ making it into the group stages of the Europa Conference League. So I really hope they don't get a brutal draw in that last qualifying round, because I really have gone quite heavy on AZ, including Maxime Decker as well. I've grabbed the boy,
nice
Decker, who I saw a couple of games. He's been injured for a while. He's also still injured. Like, he hasn't featured in preseason. But he's a talent, and he's one of the ones that I'm more happy to sort of put in like the prospects bucket of my gallery and hold him until there is an opportunity to play him, because trying to get a starting under 23 super rare defender at this moment in time, like a Euro one, you're paying 2 times, 3 times that at least. So I thought it was worthwhile sort of getting him early. I've also really sort of lent into AZ as the team I want to follow this season. I bought myself a Matt Ryan. I got myself a Van Brederode. I also got a Ladho as well. So Jens Odegaard has got a thigh injury. Guy seems to have made of glass. The amount of games that he missed last season was insane. And Ladho's been looking solid. He's been playing that right wing role, pinging the balls into Pavlidis to tap in the net from 6 yards. So I think, again, it sort of fills into that strategy of really trying to capitalize on midweeks, having players around that Southampton stack. That if AZ do get through to the group stage, there's a really, really nice overlap between AZ and Southampton in terms of fixtures. So I should be able to run composites where I've got my sort of Southampton defenders, midfielders, maybe a forward or 2 from AZ. I've got the Mignans super rare. I also bought Marcelino Nunes super rare as well. He has, so here we go, here's my purchase. If we go back, this is a card that at one point sold for 1.8 ETH. This is a player that has a history of, he's got 90 plus scores in the locker. He's just been fairly inconsistent since he moved to Norwich. If you go further back, there was sort of more of a pattern of solid upside when he was playing in South America. I got a shout out another Sorare manager who did actually sort of initially tip me off to this. It's a guy called Moldy, but we were chatting quite a bit, and he was sort of saw me focusing very heavily on the 23s and the championship, and he was like, "Oh, you should listen to the Norwich Fan podcast." And what was really, really interesting about Nunez was he didn't settle last season, and he ended up like a bunch of these are all sub appearances, and what ended up being was he didn't speak a word of English, and he really, really, really struggled to adapt. And what's happened in their off season is Norwich have brought in a Spanish speaking coach who's part of the sort of key coaching team at Norwich, and the whole idea is to try and help Nunez settle. I'm surprised they didn't go full Football Manager and ask him to recommend a player to help him settle. I think that's how far Norwich are going. But he's looked a lot more comfortable in pre-season. He's playing a deep line role. He's on all set pieces. So I really think that the upside potentially on him is pretty solid, and he fits into that, that focus of mine of really sort of, trying to play under 23s, leveraging a, sort of increased understanding of the championship. And again, I've made a couple of, the more punty signings. 0.35 is not the kind of price you're going to pay for a starting under 23 midfielder on set pieces. So, it's definitely an element of risk, but I feel like, if I want to try and, really, really compete in those midweeks and, sort of really make a charge for under 23 Rare Pro, then I need to have a couple of options. And, the great thing about this is, Nunez could be somebody that I could use in a cap mode. My next purchase, I won't give out on stream because I might not necessarily be able to make the purchase before this stream goes out. But my next sort of purchase is dipping back in to get a super rare goalkeeper again, just so that I can have more coverage in sort of dipping back into the cap mode when I've got more options available. Sort of took a step back to take a step forward really over the summer and saying, look, I'm not winning a cap mode at this moment in time. So I'm just going to reset my expectations. I'm going to reframe my gallery and then come back at it again when I've got more of these European cards. So yeah, that's sort of where my head's at, really sort of making a play for, using some of these championship cards in Global All-Star as well. Because I think we saw last season, players like Marvin Wozniak, I can't remember how to pronounce his exact name, but, you end up having some smashers that sit in the second division that is kind of an overlooked division, I think. Like, not many people seem to focus on it, they'll prioritize it. So, if I can identify some of these smashers, particularly ones with a real... a lot of fixtures, because that's what happens in the championship. They do get a lot of fixtures. I think that's really good. And in order to do that, I did sell off a lot of my Belgian cards. I have been, ever since I started in So Rare, I've always had an affinity to the Belgian league. But there's been a real big change in the league format this year that I don't like. To be perfectly honest. So they used to have 18 teams. It's now down to 16. So we've essentially lost 2 of the worst clubs in the division.
Yeah.
So last year they relegated 3 and they only brought up 1. The one that's come up is really heavily financially backed, is Molenbeek. So I don't expect Molenbeek to be the worst side in the division. I think that title's probably going to go to someone like Eupen, who are just they held on last season, and Oostende went down only because Oostende was more catastrophic than Eupen was, which is saying something. So if you think about it from a Sorare perspective, actually let's bring up a player. Who should we bring up? Should we bring up Vatican? Did Vatican have a good season?
Wasn't fantastic.
Let's look at Bongonda. No, not Bongonda. Who am I looking at? What's who is it? Genk, the guy. Tressel.
Tressel, yeah. Just going back to your AZ stuff whilst you bring this up. I actually think Decker you're made like a year early. Hatzi, his contract runs until 2024. So I think he'll go, and then they'll bring Decker through that season. But I still think Decker will get game time this year. It just might be a bit harder to predict exactly when that's going to be.
Absolutely.
Second one. Yeah, exactly. Second one is when Pavlidis does move, which could be January, or it could still be this summer, but I think probably either January or more likely next summer. Mex Meerdink will probably replace. Just keep an eye on him.
I'm gonna have to now buy him before this pod goes out. That's the problem. Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on him. And the reason I say that is because one of my strategies around the collection bonus is leveraging teams that have a lot of rookie cards.
Right, yeah.
Because they're like absolute gold. If you get first owner rookies, they're absolute gold for that collection bonus, because you get such a pump on the collection score. So yeah, I am him and Yeah,
Sorry,
basically,
mate. I've unearthed your
right.
your
You've
AZ.
shilled, you shilled before we purchased. What have we done? No, there's a few, and AZ they won the youth cup last year, didn't they? So AZ have got some really really nice players coming through. We probably do a whole other session on that around like collection strategy, to be fair. But yeah, that was one of the things that were playing in my mind around AZ was, yes, they're losing Carlson. Yes, they're using Ryan Diaz. Yes, they're using Kirkez. Who's coming up? And do those people coming up, do they have Soro cards? And that's sort of been my focus for that AZ collection. Right, so let's have a look at Tresor last season. So if we look at this, what's a great example of this is Tresor's scores when the playoffs came round. Because what's going to happen this season in Belgium is that you're going to have fewer games against like the absolute trash in the division, and the playoffs are going to be larger. So now the playoffs are going to include extra teams. So you're going to have fewer games during the regular season, more games during the playoffs. But obviously, if you finish in the top 4 or the top 5, you're now playing the top 5 teams again and again, rather than like Sierang, for example. Sure. So rather than playing Sierang, Oostende, Zulte, you're going to have an extra game against like Bruges, Genk, and Antwerp. So the composition of fixtures, you have the same amount of fixtures in the season, but a greater share of those fixtures are against more difficult opponents. And, you have a look, like if we scroll back and we have a look at, Tresor's scores last season, when were some of his high scores? Here we go, right. His highest score, is that his highest score all season? Sierang.
No, he had he got 3 assists away at Antwerp.
That was a bit of an outlier, though, I think, compared to where it ended up being.
I mean, as well, the other thing you need to consider is you're exempling one of the most bulletproof players in the league. Like, he really was fantastic last year, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I
clean
think
sheet
carry on
wise,
with your
it's
point.
going to be even worse, right? If you think about goalkeepers, defenders, like, where do you keep your clean sheets? I'd much rather play Sierang at home than Antwerp away, right? Like this is like the what's going to happen next season. So, that again, like that's really really played into my mind when deciding, what does my strategy want to be? Because although I did love playing Belgian football, the dynamic from a Soro perspective has changed significantly, and Challenger's going to be competitive again next year. And you don't, the only way you're going to win is, you want your Ajaxes versus your Volendams. You want, your Genks versus your Shirangs. You don't want more fixtures between the strongest teams in the league. And I think that's essentially what the change in the format of the Pro League in Belgium is going to do. So, yeah, it's led to me selling off a lot of my Belgian players, to be honest with you.
Well, that seems wise. I mean, yeah, I suppose it's sort of it reminds me a little bit of like the Austrian Bundesliga format, how Belgium are going now, though maybe to not quite such an extent, because there's still more teams than there are in Austria. But obviously when you have the championship playoffs there and you're just playing the top 5 teams in the division, I mean, it sort of doesn't matter so much because I just have a load of Red Bull Salzburg cards and they're just so much better than everyone else. But yeah, you do, like, if you look, even your point stands, even looking at Salzburg, if you look at the games which they win 5, 6, 7-0, it's against the really bottom teams. So yeah, I totally agree. But yeah, I feel like we've just sort of talked about what we've been doing, which is, I'm not sure if hopefully it makes for good content.
Hopefully. I think we've had a few nuggets of interesting thoughts around like why we've done what we've done, right? Which hopefully everyone will find interesting. So yeah, there we go. We're back on the horse, so to speak. Hopefully it's not 3 months until our next one, but we will do our best. But yeah, Josh, it's been a pleasure. And yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. If you listened to us rambling for over an hour, thank you ever so much. We appreciate it. See you next time.
Thanks, mate. See you.